Alcohol Tipping Point is brought to you in partnership with Speak Studios and Speak Boise. Speak Boise is a community-driven studio space where voices from all walks of life can speak and be heard. You can find them on Instagram and Facebook at Speak Studios, Speak Boise, and at their website, speakstudios.com. Speak Studios, speak and be heard. This podcast is also brought to you by Instant Imprints. Promote better with Instant Imprints. Instant Imprints are Boise's visual communications experts and your place for everything you need to promote your business, club, school, or group. As a locally owned business, Instant Imprints specializes in making your organization more visible with custom branded apparel, embroidery, promotional items, print services, and wide format printing for signs, as well as banners and vehicle graphics. Want better ways to get noticed? Visit Instant Imprints at instantimprints.com/Boise or call 208-IMPRINT. That's 208-467-7468. Welcome to the Alcohol Tipping Point podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Maisner. Today I have Christina Kimbrough with me. She is the host of 1,000 Hours Dry Military. She has her own website blog it's www.christinakimbrough.com, and I'm just super excited to have her here today and share her story about her alcohol use and how that's affected her life. So welcome, Christina.
Yeah, thank you. I feel so grateful to be here and share this space with you.
Yeah. Now, where are you calling in from?
Yeah, so I am in Chesapeake, Virginia. It's kind of like, if you know where Virginia Beach is, about 3 hours south of DC.
Okay, fantastic. So East Coast.
Yes, East Coast. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but my husband is in the Navy, so we are stationed here.
Okay, fantastic. And tell me just a little bit about just what your background is, what you do, before we get into your experience with alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated in 2011, which feels so weird to say. I feel like time's going so fast, but with my bachelor's in journalism, so communications major. I started out working in nonprofits and government, and then I met my husband. And more military, like I said, so we had to move around a lot. So I started to work for myself about 4 years ago as like a marketing consultant and then content creator and writer. So that's kind of what I do currently is post content on my own website, write for some local magazines, and then create content on my own Instagram. And then, like you said, 1,000 Hours Dry, and I focus on mental health and sobriety.
Great. Okay. Well, that leads right into what your experience with alcohol has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just listening to your, I think it was your latest one or one of the recent ones. Someone was talking about how he started drinking socially, and then my addiction didn't ramp up until I'm 32. So I would say like my early 30s. So my family doesn't drink. They're just kind of Christian background, just never drank, right? So I wasn't really around it. Interestingly enough, I didn't drink in college. I went to a small private school and, but looking back, when I did drink, I was the one, puking in the bathroom, crying, blacking out. So I did have problematic drinking from the start, but I hated that, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. So I kind of just didn't really drink throughout college. And then I started drinking. My real heavy drinking started 24, 25. I met my husband in San Diego, and he was a friend of my brother who was stationed there. He's a Marine. We were drinking the whole weekend, and, we moved to Florida, and, military culture is huge drinking, partying. And so I just kind of did what everyone else did. I didn't really see that I had a problem. And then it continued, and I moved to Virginia, and I would go to parties and like happy hours, but I was the one not coming home. I like I would stay out till 2 a.m. My husband had to come get me, type thing. And then in 2020, I hit a low. I had gotten a new job that I really wanted. I actually stayed all night drinking till like 8 a.m. I know it's crazy. I found people to drink with. If you're an alcoholic or you identify that way, you will definitely find the people that are drinking. Anyway, I showed up to that job intoxicated and went on like a 2-day binge where I stayed intoxicated the whole time. I got high on Adderall. Like it was a real low point for me. And I came home, and my husband was like, I don't know what to do. You need help. And I was like, I agree. So I decided to move home to Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from, live with my grandma. Got sober. My sober date's February 3rd, 2020. I did an intensive outpatient for like 8 weeks. And the day that I finished, everything in Ohio shut down. So that was, I feel blessed that I was able to finish that program and then get sober. So it's kind of a long way of telling you my story, but it's been a journey.
Yeah. So prior to kind of your proverbial rock bottom, had you tried to quit drinking?
Yes, great question. Yeah, so I think it was like 29 or 30, right? When I was like, okay, I have a problem. I was, like I said, I was staying out at the happy hours, and then it started so I worked for myself, which made it kind of dangerous because I was very project based, right? So I could finish a project, and if I was done, early in the day, I could start drinking when I wanted to. So, maybe I was done and I would start drinking around 3 or 4, and it just progressed, and got worse. So I realized I was like, yeah, I need to quit. So I started AA. I tried, I was what they call, in and out of the rooms, for about 2 years. And besides AA, I just didn't know anywhere else to go. I think that's kind of a common thing. You hear the recovery circles, and I didn't really know what to do. So yeah, I mean, there were many relapses. I think I maybe could string together, a week or two. My grandma actually came and lived with us for like a month. And I was still drinking when she was there and hiking it. So, yeah, it took me about 2 years to get sober.
Yeah. And what do you think was different when you said you went back home, lived with your grandma? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And did the intensive outpatient. Tell me what that was like.
Yeah, so I really attribute me being able to quit to that. I mean, so I wouldn't say I was addicted. I wasn't like craving it, or I wasn't, waking up and needing a beer right away, but I was headed that way. And I entered outpatient. I was like, it was the most humbling experience because they would drug test you every morning. So you had to pee in a cup in front of someone, they were in the bathroom with you type thing. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is where my life's come to. People don't trust me. And then actually my grandma took my keys. Well, I mean, I volunteered them. It was kind of like a deal we made because I was still drinking when I got to her house at first. Drinking and driving. And, I like being open about that because I think it's very common. And, I like to just share like how dangerous that is. And it's just a reality of active addiction. But, yeah, so I'd hit that low. My grandma had to drive me to my outpatient. I didn't use my car. I didn't have money, any of that. So I could, because I was sneaking alcohol. And so that, yeah, outpatient saved my life because I felt like at this point I was like, I need help and this is my last resort. And, you would get kicked out of the program if they found any, substance in your urine. So it was like, okay, so that first month really, I mean, that's what kept me sober, was just kind of like, you can't screw this up. So.
Yeah. And I don't really know that much about the outpatient experience. So tell me more, like, was that a daily thing? Was that all day? And how did you decide to go that route versus doing like an inpatient rehab?
Yeah, absolutely. So To answer the second question, I didn't want to do inpatient because I wasn't chemically dependent. Like didn't, I didn't need to detox because I could go like, 2 or 3 days without alcohol, which isn't great. But I mean, I just wasn't, chemically dependent where I felt like that felt like a big commitment. I just wasn't there. So I called around and found out I had done outpatient for mental health before. And basically it's group therapy. It was pretty intense. I mean, that's why they call it intensive outpatient. It's I think it was like 4 days a week from like 9 to 2.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So it is, you show up and there's, licensed addiction therapists, social workers, and you get like a care plan on how you're going to stay sober. They ask you questions. And then it's just group therapy to learn about addiction, where it comes from, the way it chemically alters your brain. And then they also help you learn coping skills, for anxiety, depression, whatever may have caused you to drink. So yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. And they do daily drug testing.
Yeah. It wasn't every day, but it would be random.
Okay.
So they would, so they would call you out in the middle of class, it wasn't like not embarrassing, but they would say, hey, can you turn a drug test, and you would be pulled out of group. And so just knowing that, it was like, okay, this could happen any day. So I can't have that one drink, even if I'm craving it.
Which was probably helpful.
So helpful. Oh my gosh. I mean, I attribute that to how I got sober that first month, because once I would say the first week I was obsessing over alcohol. I mean, I still had that phenomenon of craving, as they say, and I thought about it a lot. I was still tempted, but once I could get over the hump of like that month and kind of clear my brain, and get kind of reset my body, and I saw that I could do it, the obsession definitely subsided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you practice, you gain confidence in yourself.
Exactly.
Well, what were some of the takeaways from that program that you learned? You mentioned coping skills. You learned about how your body uses alcohol, the chemical imbalances. What were some of the takeaways?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first thing would be, I just learned, for me, anxiety was a big reason I drank. So I learned just about the idea of like how, like, I was on medicine and still am for anxiety, and how that, alcohol makes it worse, and it impacts your medicine's not going to work. Right. So just learning that was like, gosh, okay, that makes sense why, my medicine isn't working and I'm getting frustrated, because I'm putting a chemical in my body. So kind of just understanding that. And then also just kind of diving into some of the trauma that I had, been through in childhood, and just the impact that trauma has on the brain, and what it takes, how that can make me, more susceptible to addiction. That made me try and figure out, okay, what do I need to heal from? What inner child work do I need to do? That kind of thing. And then honestly, I started meditating. They introduced mindfulness to us. And then I actually meditate now pretty much every day, at least for 10 minutes. And that was life-changing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah.
What does your meditation look like? Because I think a lot of people have different perceptions of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say I am a guided meditation person all the way. I try, just kind of sitting by myself and like breathing deeply and stuff. And for me, it's just, I've used apps. So I either use Insight Timer, which is free, or I use Calm. And I love Calm. It's just beautiful. There's like a daily one with a different theme every day. And then there's ones for anything you can think of, whether it's anxiety, depression, performance anxiety, whatever you're going through. And I lay or sit, kind of light a candle. And, I have an active brain. I do. I've never reached that place where it's like, my brain's completely clear. And, I think that's a misperception with mindfulness and meditation, is that it's to clear the mind. But it really, for me, is just kind of learning to sit back and observe those thoughts and not attach to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes practice, that's for sure.
So much practice.
So you did your inpatient intensive therapy, you got out and the pandemic hit. Tell me
Yeah.
about what it was like for you after that.
Yeah. So, so I ended that, and it's kind of scary because it was like, oh my gosh, that had been my safe space, and it had given me structure, and I didn't have a job, because of COVID, and I had moved and all these crazy things. So it was kind of like, now what? And I had used AA when I first got there, and I was going for about a month because I moved in January 2020, and that's right before everything shut down. So I had found a sponsor and I had found AA, but that I only had gone to a month of meetings, once a week, and so that all shut down. So again, I lost that support group. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a huge, huge adjustment. I started doing like 2 meetings a week online and, calling my sponsor every day. But my first sponsor actually relapsed because of COVID. She, after like 10 years of sobriety. And so that was another challenge to like,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was super scary because I think at that point I had like 2 months sober, something like that. At first it was scary, but then it was motivation to really like work on my recovery. And I would just say that that's when my Instagram and blogging kind of took off. At a month sober, I shared openly that I identified as an alcoholic and I had been struggling. And nobody knew that about me. I have bipolar and anxiety, and I had shared openly about that. But nobody knew about my substance abuse except for like my husband, maybe a few close friends and family. But so yeah, I dove into the Instagram world and found I did like an online school through Tempest. And they're like, it's basically help to quit drinking or examine your relationship with drinking. I did like a 6-week online course, and then I joined We Are the Luckiest, which is just online, again, like online meetings. So I always say like COVID was crazy because it was like, oh gosh, my in-person meetings were taken away, but then it kind of forced me to go online and find podcasts and books and other resources.
Yeah, and what did you find helpful about being online, and what kind of books did you find helpful?
Yeah, so I mean, really online, I loved being able to find girls my age. I felt like when I went to, or women when I went to AA, it was like, older men, and it's not horrible, but it was just like I didn't, and they had talked about losing their homes and their marriages, and I was like, I mean, I'm not doing great, but I still have all of that, so it's like there was a lot I didn't relate to. So I found a lot of women online that were recovering out loud, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally relate. Like, you drank with your friends, but you knew it was problematic, so I would say, the Instagram world. And then I read a lot of books. I read Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker, We Are the Luckiest by Laura McCowan, and This Naked Mind by Annie Grace.
Yeah, those are all fantastic books. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what would you say are your top tips for anyone looking to change their relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is really just questioning, like I learned in Tempest, it was, I had made the decision to go sober. That was what I needed to do. But it was the first point of like asking yourself, like reevaluating your relationship with alcohol and saying, wait, am I living to my fullest? Like, is alcohol interfering with my life, because I always say, like, you don't have to be an alcoholic or identify as one to even want to quit. You don't have to hit that rock bottom. So, is it impacting your job? Do you wake up hungover? Is it like, for me, a big one was I'm a runner, and it took away the ability to do that because I was either drunk or hungover. So I would say just kind of being aware and like mindful of what that might look like. And then, kind of just leaning into, Yeah, like online, man, all my social feeds are really curated around sobriety. So I love seeing that. And like, it's like a positive dose, during my day, because all of us scroll. I feel like we're all online a lot. So just kind of, surrounding yourself with that, even being sober, curious, and just kind of looking at other lifestyles and kind of considering it.
Yeah, I find that helpful too. I also did, Annie Grace, who wrote This Naked Mind, has something called the alcohol experiment. And that's a 30-day free challenge. And there's an online component to it as well. And because you feel so alone because you are around other people who are drinking as much or sometimes more than you. And you just think, wow, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I handle this? And then to find all these people that are like you, like, oh, there's a whole world out there of people that aren't managing their drinking and have problems, and they don't necessarily identify as alcoholics or hit rock bottom. But they look like us, they act like us, women, there are a lot of women, like you said.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because I didn't start my Instagram account until November, and I thought I'll probably be only like a few sober Instagram accounts, but there's like a whole pocket of sober Instagram that is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they say the opposite of addiction is community.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just learned that. Actually, I'm reading another good book. It's by Gabor Mate. I could be pronouncing his name wrong, but it's about addiction, right? Mm-hmm. And he just he's a doctor who, that's what he did is took care of, addicts. And he was just talking about how, it's a circle, right? Because what happens is when we drink a lot, and again, you don't have to be an alcoholic. It's like, the problematic drinking can lead to drinking at home, and you don't hang out with people. You're not as social, right? And then, you're cut off from your friends and family. And so it's just this cycle of being alone with your addiction.
Well, and I was reading through some of your blog posts, and you had mentioned that it's harder this summer than last summer. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, right. So when I got out in Ohio, everything, I think it was, nationwide, but everything had shut down. So the bars weren't open, and that wasn't an option. And I'm an extrovert, and bars were kind of I would certainly drink at home after the bar, but I would find myself at the bar at happy hour and things like that. Cause that really was my community. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it was, just being honest. And so, that helped, right? It was crazy. But I mean, and I always like to preface it to say, like, my heart goes out to the restaurant industry and the bars and all that, because I know that's, people's livelihoods. But for me, it was strange. It helped because, again, not an option. So I lived my first, year almost pretty much without going to gatherings and barbecues. Last year at this time, 4th of July, I was with my grandma, and she's high risk. Like, we couldn't, height of the pandemic, so we couldn't go anywhere. So I didn't even I wasn't faced with it. I didn't have to learn to cope with it. I didn't have to learn to be around people that were drinking, or learn how I wanted to identify, or how I wanted to say no to drinks. So, now I think I'm at like 500 something days, 13 days sober, and I did just start going to barbecues and, shows. Like, I loved it. Like, I belong to a local improv group, and they all drink. And so it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I thought this was going to be easy, but it's not, because I'm almost like in early recovery again, where I'm having to learn what it looks like to socialize without alcohol.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's been amazing. I would say the first month or so, when things were opening up, it was hard. I had to learn to put my boundaries up, and, what's helped me is my friends know that I'm sober. They know because of online, but then in person, they also know. So it's, I just went out with a girlfriend for mocktails, and she was amazing. She didn't drink. I think she may have had one alcoholic drink, but we got mocktails together and dinner. And so I've just surrounded myself with people who either don't drink, or if they do, are mindful of their drinking around me. And I am by no means like, I don't tell people like, you can't drink, or, I'm not like that. I don't make people feel uncomfortable. But I also am aware of my own boundaries, where it's like, okay, I'm going to leave early before things get a little crazy, But for the most part, yeah, it's been great. It's just kind of leaning into my comfort zone and learning. And I've had awkward moments. I remember I sat down with my good friend recently at the bar to get a mocktail, and we sat down and someone handed us shots, I was like, oh my God. Like we didn't even order them. And so I was like, oh, thank you. I don't really drink. And so I love recovering out loud, because I want people to also understand that, like, not everybody drinks. You know what I mean? Like, whether you're in recovery or not, there's also a lot of people out there who just don't drink. So I want to normalize sobriety, or being sober curious.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like a health choice, really.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I want to make the space for that. That's why I like 1,000 Hours Dry, because it's like trying to be more inclusive, other than people I identify, I'm in recovery and I'm an alcoholic, but there's also just people that I've met who are like, I don't like how I feel, when I drink. And what's it like to go to a barbecue or a party, or, hang out without alcohol? And a lot of my friends have been like, this is great. I'm like, I know. So.
Yeah, and you feel good the next day. And
Exactly. You wake up and you can get things done, and you can exercise. I mean, it's been, sobriety is the best gift I've ever given myself.
For sure. Now tell me, you've mentioned 1,000 Hours Dry.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about that and what you do with the 1,000 Hours Dry military.
Yeah, so 1,000 Hours Dry, they just started, I think, just like either a challenge or like online thing that people can join, where it's like, I think 1,000 hours would be like 42 days without alcohol. And so it kind of just invites anybody that may want to stop drinking or question their, relationship with alcohol to join in with an online movement. And I think they partnered with like Reframe app, which I think you pay, but maybe the first week is free, where you can find, resources, kind of count the days you're sober, that kind of thing. But we just started an account called 1,000 Hours Dry Military. And so really, I'm a military spouse, and military spouse community. I don't now, but I used to drink with military spouses all the time, because we move, it's very difficult to make friends. And so, making friends can be awkward, right? Like, it's just weird. You don't know people. You're kind of thrown together because of your spouse. And so alcohol can ease that. It could be something that we all have in common right away. And ease the awkwardness of that. So we also just talk about sobriety and what it looks like, or even, again, they don't usually say sobriety. We say like alcohol-free, just to kind of be inclusive. But, I just share what it's like to be an alcohol-free spouse.
And have you had members of the military community or people in your life since you've gotten sober come to you for help?
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, it's been cool. My husband stopped drinking as well. I think he identifies like that gray area drinker, non-alcoholic, but he knew he kind of had a problem. So he watched my process and journey and made his own decision to quit drinking a few months ago, which has been incredible. So, I think I helped him just kind of figure out his own journey and process. And then I would say I haven't had military reach out just yet. I did just start, I think, maybe like a month ago or 2 months ago, hosting that page. And it's still gaining traction. It's like a newer part of 1,000 Hours Dry. But I have had many people reach out, actually, who are drinking, or who have family members that are drinking. And, I'm not a counselor or therapist. I always say that, but I'm like, I can just share what's worked for me and, kind of show you, that my life is so much better. So yeah, in that essence, I have talked to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm always surprised if I post on my public page. I always have someone reach out to me, and it's usually surprising. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just don't know. You really don't
Yes.
know.
Exactly. Oh, like, especially when I first opened up about it, I had people saying, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, I'm currently struggling." And they would be honest. They're like, "I'm not really looking to get sober yet, but I follow you. You're encouraging. Like, thank you so much because, I've suffered in silence and I felt so alone." And yeah, it's just like you said, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." So,
Yeah. Well, how has your life changed since removing alcohol?
oh my gosh, I mean, everything, every area. I remember my sponsor had me write down like every way that alcohol negatively impacted my life, and I started the list. And I was like, oh, it's like there may be 3 or 5 ways, and I was like, oh my goodness, So, I mean, every way I can think of: my marriage, my health, physically, my mental health, my friendships, my money. I mean, I was spending a lot of money on alcohol. I think that's, a given.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've just like healed, right? Like I've worked on healing trauma. I'm learning how to deal with my anxiety without substances. And then the other one is, on a fun note too, it's like I just picked up fun new things. Like I started an improv class and I started boxing, and, because you want to find community outside of alcohol. Like I said, the bars were my community. And so I just found some cool things about myself. I'm like, wow, I'm kind of good at being fun and on stage. And like, what does that even look like? And I've gotten a little more creative. I've started writing more and, that kind of thing. So, honestly, everything has gotten better. But I mean, I will preface it to say, like, life still keeps happening. Like there's still challenges. I'm not making them worse by drinking. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, 100%. What are your plans for the future?
Yeah, so actually, since getting sober, I have decided to go back to school and get my master's to become like a family therapist. And so I'm taking the GRE actually, that means to like get into grad school. So I'm applying this summer, and then hopefully, if I get accepted, go back to school next spring to be like a family therapist, and then hopefully looking into maybe even becoming an addictions counselor, and kind of walking down and seeing what that looks like.
That's fantastic. I mean, you're already helping people.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what, I think that's part of why I made the decision to make a career change. Was I do have a lot of people reach out, and I'm like, I'm only limited in what I can give resource wise. And so I was like, I would really love to, like, I have a marketing background. So I was like, I would love to kind of figure out how to take what I learn in therapy and, school, and make it accessible by building, an online brand. And so that's kind of, the route that I'd like to take.
Yeah. Well, how can someone find you?
Yeah, so Instagram, I think, like I said, is kind of just the main place I'm at. So it's just C and then Kimbrough, Kimbrough 1. And then I am on, just like you said, website, ChristinaKimbrough.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story and inspiring other people. I
Oh my
really
gosh, yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's you're doing great work with your podcast. I think it's important to share different ways of recovery, and I think you do that, very well. It's just like there's not a one size fits all for anybody, and there's all kinds of us in recovery, or whether it's, sober curious or not. So I appreciate you, and thank you for letting me share my story.
Absolutely. Attention Idaho and California residents. If you're shopping for a mortgage, contact PacFi, a mortgage brokerage with the top wholesale lenders in the nation. They are committed to simplifying the mortgage process, saving you time and money. Call 858-442-7048 or visit pacfi.com. NMLS number 1462943, Equal Housing Lender. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Alcohol Tipping Point. I'm always here for you guys, so please feel free to reach out and talk to me on Instagram at Alcohol Tipping Point, and check out my website, alcoholtippingpoint.com. Again, I hope you can use these tips we talked about for the rest of your week. And until then, see you next time.